Hello and welcome to Working with Miniatures. Today we're going to be building custom terrain to be used with Dungeons and Dragons. We'll be using the XPS phone to make a cavern tunnel. Let's get started. As soon as we finish the blocking on this deck. I start by cutting XPS foam pieces right around 2.5 inches tall. This should be tall enough to accommodate most miniatures. I'm using the Proxxon Thermocut 115E hot wire cutter, but you can do these same cuts with a utility knife and a metal straight edge. A hot wire cutter is not necessary, but does make this step easier and quicker. With 4 blocks cut, I cut a taper on the end of them, making a wedge shape. This downward slope will serve as the back of the cave. For the pieces that will make up the downward sloping sides of the entrance, I cut narrow pieces from XPS foam about 1 inch tall. These were from scraps that I had saved from previous projects. I forgot to turn the camera on here, but I had glued 4 of the wedge-shaped blocks together and then carefully with a utility knife cut my cave entrance. I was careful not to cut through the thin sides or through the thin top of the tunnel. With the utility knife, I then roughed the edges and removed sharp corners of the foam, aiming for a rocky or rubble-like effect. On a flat piece of foam roughly 8 inches square, I traced the inside of the tunnel. With the utility knife, I slowly and carefully start to carve out the tunnel floor, trying to round it where it's deeper in the center, while also keeping the back of the tunnel deeper than where the entrance will be. With superglue and PVA glue, I glue the tunnel in place and let it cure. I use a combination of the two as the superglue will cure faster. If you use superglue with XPS foam, be careful not to put it on too heavily as it can melt the foam. With the tunnel in place, I then begin adhering the pieces from the sides of the tunnel. These I more or less just eyeball and cut them as I need to with the utility knife before gluing them in place. Once all the adhesive is set, I use an X-Acto knife to round the block edges and ease the transitions between each segment by carving them down, getting it as close as I can to one piece of foam. Once a trimming is complete, I add additional glue for reinforcement and then let it cure again. With the utility knife and X-Acto knife, I then carve the edges down of the platform around the corners. Using AK Interactive's Muddy Ground texture paste, I coat everything except the underside of the platform. This will help fill any gaps between the segments as well as give a rougher, uneven texture. Once the terrain paste is dried, I add green, brown, and black washes and spread them around everything to add a little bit of color variation. I use cheap homemade washes made from drops of dish soap, distilled water, and craft paint. Once the washes have dried, I heavily dry brush the stone with a mid-tone gray craft paint, and follow it with a lighter gray, covering less surface area. Finally, I dry brush white over the lightest areas and edges. I then dry brush the ground using a mid-brown, followed by a lighter brown, covering less area with the second coat. Once the paint is dried, I spread PVA glue over the ground and liberally apply flocking. I also apply PVA glue and flocking across the upper areas of the rock. This is the final results.
Going to wrap it up for today. I hope you learned something or were inspired to build your own custom terrain. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And if you like the content of this video and would like to see more, please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I'm Jim with Working with Miniatures. Truly grateful for your time. I bid you a fond farewell. Until the next video.